This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is up on Center Stage, the show about the arts and the artists behind their work. Conductor, composer, and musician extraordinaire Leonard Bernstein had this to say about the orchestral conductor's job. Perhaps the chief requirement of the conductor is that he be humble before the composer, that he never interpose himself between the music and the audience, that all his efforts, however strenuous or glamorous, be made in the service of the composer's meaning. The music itself, which, after all, is the whole reason for the conductor's existence. Well, being in service to the composer and the music is, in an ideal artistic environment, the pinnacle of our lives as musicians. How artists find the inspiration in being of service to great music is where some of our most profound stories lie. Well, today I am speaking with a conductor who honors the composer and the music, who finds the secret language of the space between the notes, and ultimately takes us on a significant journey of artistic discovery. Conductor Gerard Schwarz has had no problem finding truth in musical expression, and his abilities to facilitate fundraising and donor relations is recognized as a gift that is equal to the orchestras that he has conducted. He has served as music director of the Mostly Mozart Festival in New York, the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, and the New York Chamber Symphony. For 26 years, he presided over the Seattle Symphony, developing the orchestra's strength and stature. His influence in the building of Benaroya Hall in Seattle is simply that of legend. I have a suspicion that Gerard Schwarz is the adventurer I so often seek in my interviews. He's a creator and a builder. I'm going to call him an architect from now on in this interview. His road to establishing his legacy has never been traditional, really. Though his hundreds of accolades, including 7 Emmy Awards, 14 Grammy nominations, and 8 ASCAP Awards, have marked Maestro Gerard Schwarz as one of the most important conductors and advocates for music in the world. Now principal music director of the Palm Beach Symphony since 2019, Jerry Schwarz is sharing his truths with a new league of players and fans. Gerard Schwarz, I want to welcome you to Center Stage. It is simply an honor to have you with me.
Well, thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. Boy, very poetic. Thank you so much.
I specialize in them, Gerard. I tell you, I sit with my candidates and I try to invoke just a feeling of who they really are, So we never become just another cookie cutter interview.
That's for sure. Thank you.
It's about the artist's journey, and yours has been so interesting. Now I've got to ask you the big pivotal first question. After hearing that intro, how have you found the inspiration to be of service to the composer and the music and find your honest truth?
Well, I agree with Bernstein 100%. I must say that I knew him quite well. I'm not always sure that he abided by his own thinking. And very often I felt that there was the Leonard Bernstein show and it wasn't the Beethoven show or the Brahms show.
I was thinking that too myself, to be honest.
But he was brilliant, as we all know, and in so many ways, and certainly he was accurate. We are the servants of the great creators. The creators are our inspiration. And so our job is to, yes, make whatever is special in that music come forward. The composer gives us just black and white on a piece of paper. Yes, with a lot of directions, but it's, as you said, it's what goes on behind those notes, behind those directions that is so important for us to really understand it, to digest it, to have it become part of who we are and part of our lives. And that's why we conductors really are always learning. We're always studying. We're always thinking about how to do it better. And that's why so many of the greatest conductors obviously have been known when they were old. I mean, look at Toscanini, who became music director of the NBC Symphony when he was 70. That's when he began there. And in a way, having those years of experience and study at the service of those composers is what it's all about. And quite frankly, it's not about us. It's not about me, and it's not about Toscanini, and it's not about Bernstein really either. It's about Beethoven and Brahms and David Diamond and Aaron Copland and whomever, because they are the people that we revere and we try to bring to the musicians and the orchestra, but maybe even more importantly to the audience. So when I talk about what my thinking first is to be a servant, yes, to the composer as best I can. I do everything I can to perform what he or she wrote as close as possible. Of course, and there's a lot of interpretation that goes on beyond that. There's no question, naturally. But then my next concern is to make sure that the audience is well taken care of, because they're the ones that we're trying to express this to. I care deeply about the audience. I care about what we perform and how we perform it, and to make sure that we bring this music life to them. And then, of course, to the orchestra. But I would say it's in that order: the composer, the audience, and then the musicians in front of me. And it's a wonderful journey. As again, you say, it's a journey with every piece we play, every piece I conduct, every audience that you perform for. And it's a thrilling, exciting journey every time. Every time I get up to conduct anything, it's an important journey for me.
That is so thrilling to hear you say, as a conductor, and now as, of course, a teacher to aspiring young conductors. I mean, I'm sure you've been saying those words all afternoon at your new position at the Frost School of Music in Florida.
Well, it's interesting. Yes, I'm teaching conducting now. So I teach it at the Eastern Music Festival. I have a very wonderful conducting class. And then I have 4 students here at the University of Miami, at the Frost School. But my students really are the orchestra, aren't they? So we have 100 musicians in the school that play in the orchestra. And it's my job to hopefully teach them something, not just conduct them, not just say, play this, play that, do this, do that, the way you often have to do with professionals. Because with professionals, they want you to be efficient. They want you to get the show on the road, and don't waste my time, and don't educate me. Just tell me what you want, or show me what you want. When you're working with students, even on an extremely high level, the way they are here at Frost, you have the opportunity to give the reasons why. Not just play softer, play louder, better, but why should this note be a certain length and that note be a different length? What did the composer write? You know, it just comes up over and over again, and it's really fun. It's fun to be able to say the why that very often with professionals you're not able to do. I mean, I remember when I was in the New York Philharmonic and Pierre Boulez was the music director. He was really remarkable on many, especially with balances and with intonation and with certain pacing things. But he never was one to tell you why. So he tuned things and he'd work things out, and then it would have to go a new existence, if you may. But he never said
that's
why.
Interesting.
And so as a result, the musicians many of them in those days didn't quite get what he was about. I mean, yes, he wasn't about conducting Brahms and Beethoven, but he was about beautiful sonorities, beautiful balances, beautiful intonation, especially in the French repertoire and in contemporary music. I mean, Stravinsky, Ravel. I mean, it was just a great experience having played all those pieces with him.
Now, let's talk about your time in the New York Philharmonic. You were a trumpet player, and I find this so fascinating that, as I said in the beginning, you came to conducting in a rather unusual fashion. And I really would love to hear about the genesis of that. What was that cathartic experience that you had that made you want to pick up that baton?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you point that out, because when you think of conductors, most of them play the piano. Well, I play the piano. I've always played the piano since I was a little boy. But most of them are pianists. I'm not a pianist. I don't go and play concertos the way Daniel Barenboim can, or the way Leonard Bernstein could. Or they're string players. So Toscanini was a cellist, and Kusevitsky was a bass player, and so forth. Very rare does a conductor come from the background of any wind instrument. Okay, a flute or an oboe, maybe, but a trumpet, I mean, trumpets, they sit in the back, they play too loud, and they're not musical, and they're not sensitive. That,
Right.
I mean, it's tricky. I mean, I remember when I was leaving the Philharmonic to pursue my conducting full time, one of my friends in the orchestra said to me, "Why would you leave being one of the best trumpet players in the world to become a lousy conductor?" Of course, my answer was, I'm hoping I won't be a lousy conductor.
Exactly. Beautifully honest, beautifully. I love it.
But so in a way, it's a disadvantage
Yeah.
to come from the world of the trumpet, because we are not considered musicians on the level of violinists or pianists. We may be, but that's not the way we're thought. Now, if you're not a very famous trumpet player, then it's no problem, because nobody knows what instrument you play anyway. A lot of what instrument does Zubin made to play? Well, he plays the double bass, but I happen to know that. I'm sure, Pamela, you know that, but very few people know that, nor do they care. On the other hand, if you're a famous trumpet player, and I was in my youth pretty famous, then it's either, oh, isn't it? He's such a great musician. Isn't that great? He's going to conducting, or a trumpet player becoming a conductor. It's absurd. Can't have. So that was, on the one hand, it was an advantage because of my ability. I knew a lot of people, and it was a disadvantage because we're not thought as trumpet players of being artists in that sense. What happened with me was, it has a lot to do with everything that has to do with your upbringing, where you live. I mean, you're from Oregon. I mean, that's part of who you are. No matter what you do, you will be something about Oregon that would be part of. Oh, I left Oregon years ago. I live in Greenwich, and I blah blah. On the other hand, as part of who you are. In my upbringing, it was a very wonderful one. My parents were Viennese. They came to the United States in 1939, and our home was a cultural home. Even though my parents were doctors, they cared deeply about music and about symphonic music, not chamber music so much. Symphonic music, opera, ballet. And they exposed my sisters and I to that. And that was our home life. That was who we were. And we all played the piano, and we all went to the New York Philharmonic, and we all went to the New York City Ballet, and we all, went to, on occasion, the Met. Not too often the Met. My parents would take those tickets for themselves, of course. But so that is where I came from. So that's my heritage. My heritage is that Middle European upbringing that my sisters and I had. And I mean, I didn't even know that I was having that kind of upbringing until I went to Vienna for the first time. And I went with my parents. I was on tour, and they came to show me around, and it just seemed like home, because that's what the home was. Home was like what life was like in Vienna. And so that was my background. So all I wanted to do in my life was be a fine trumpet player, and all I wanted to do was play in the New York Philharmonic. And luckily, I was able to do that, and I could have done it for the rest of my life. I loved it. On the other hand, I also loved composers that I didn't get to play much. There wasn't a lot in Mozart. There wasn't a lot in Haydn. There wasn't a lot in Schubert. There wasn't. I didn't have the ability to express myself as an orchestral musician. Even now, if you ask me, are the trumpets important in Schubert and Mozart and Haydn? Absolutely. If you don't have a really good trumpet, could it really hurt your performance? Absolutely. I'm not saying that their role isn't important, but they're not playing the melody. They're there for emphasis. They're there for support. They're there for drama. So after I was in the Philharmonic, it dawned on me that really, as much as I loved it, I really think I could make a contribution, artistic contribution, as a conductor. And when I was sitting there, listening to all of the guest conductors, in fact, Haitink, who just died, would come almost every year, and great conductors. And so often, I'm not talking about Haitink now, but so often, their concern was that it be together, and that wouldn't be too loud or too soft. Very rarely did they talk about phrasing. Very rarely did they ever talk about the trajectory of a movement. Very rarely do they talk about pacing. Very rarely do they do things which I consider to be paramount in terms of music making. And I thought, gee whiz, maybe I could make a contribution here. And if I ever have that opportunity, I will make the expressive parts of conducting the most important part, without question.
Wow.
For me, it was about, if you talk to my students, does he work on rhythm? Does he work on good? I work on phrasing. I work on everything, of course, but phrasing is the number one issue for me. And the phrase could be 16 bars, could be 30 bars. It could be part of the trajectory of the whole movement, obviously. It's big phrases as well as little phrases. And so that's really what I've done. And here I am still doing it. And I'm thinking about it now as I'm talking to you, that was what I thought about when I was 28 years old. And now, at 74, I'm still thinking the same way.
It's the same way. So, but how did you step out of the rear of the orchestra? I mean, I remember reading a marvelous article about you in the New York Times about the emergence of this young conductor, and that there was an opportunity at Aspen for you to step forward and conduct. And you were just like, gotcha, I can do this. Now, is that the kind of guy you really are? Can I call you Jerry?
Yes, you're exactly right. Because a conductor can't be a shrinking violet. A conductor has to be secure and sure of himself. There's no question. You can't get in front of the orchestra and question everything you do. You question everything you do at home. When you study, you question every note, every beat, every dynamic, every phrase. But when you get in front of the orchestra, you have to have a point of view. Now, it can change very quickly. An orchestra can give you some information, and a solo player or even a string section give you information that isn't what you were thinking about. And I said, wow, that's really smart. Maybe we'll just do it like that. Or I'm doing it like this because that's what I wanted to do, but it's not working. Let me do it a different way. I mean, you do, but when you initially get up there, you have to be confident. You have to be sure of yourself. You shouldn't be arrogant, obviously. You shouldn't be. You should be a team player. I mean, we are team players.
Right.
On the other hand, you can't expect to go there and learn on the job. You learn a lot while you're conducting, but you come to it from having a lot more knowledge of every note. I mean, when you look at a score and you see all those notes, well, as a conductor, you really have to know all of the notes. You have to have thought about all of the notes and every player and how they are going to play it or how you think it should go. Again, you have to be flexible. People play in different ways. People give you information. And sometimes it changes the way you think about pieces. On the other hand, yes, you have to have a sense of confidence without question.
And I have a feeling that you, as the architect, as I like to refer to you now, you were born with that, perhaps. I mean, you speak of this family, the Viennese parents. Your parents were physicians, I believe, and I know there's a direct correlation between, doctors and musicians. I mean, all we have to do is look to the Doctors Orchestra in Los Angeles, which is very fine. Do you think with that comes a certain joie de vivre that you're just born with, that allowed you to grasp the brass ring?
Yes, I believe that everyone is born with gifts of different kinds. And some of the gifts are ones that you make sure everybody knows about. And then sometimes you have liabilities. And you kind of try to hide those. Anybody to see your liabilities, you have to evaluate yourself, and it has a lot to do with perception too. You perceive of yourself in a certain way, others perceive of you in a certain way, and the real perception is somewhere. They may be all the same or may be different, but the idea is, I think I am a good conductor. I want the orchestra to think I'm a good conductor, and I want the public to think I'm a good conductor. That's ideal. Now, if I think, oh, I am the greatest conductor, and the orchestra says, oh, he's a terrible conductor, and the audience thinks, oh, he's mediocre. I mean, that's not so hot. You have to try to make sure that you're in tune. And a lot of The question is exactly right. A lot of what you are is, is it nurture, or is it the way you were born?
Mm,
Who knows? But I think of a work ethic. I'm a very hard worker. I always work very hard.
hmm
My parents were extremely hard workers. My children are extremely hard workers. That is our way. We don't count hours. We don't count services. We just do what you have to do. And that's something in a way, either you're born with or your parents instilled in you by example. So
Yeah.
a lot of the leadership qualities I think that conductors need do come from your upbringing. Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you can't learn it. Obviously, there are things, we all have learned a lot of things in our lives, and hopefully we're better human beings than we may have been 20 years ago, if we're at least
hmm
20 years old. Things change and people
That's
change
right.
and you grow. But the fundamentals, I think, are established many, many years ago for all of us.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. This is a marvelous life you're talking about. I mean, even if you had not been blessed with a great talent, you still would have had a marvelous life, Jerry, from the sound of it. I mean, and I can tell from the smile wrinkles around your eyes and your mouth, you've enjoyed this life. It's a beautiful thing. That's a
It,
beautiful.
it is absolutely every day. Every day I'm excited to get up.
That's fantastic. Going back to when you stepped out of the orchestra literally and grabbed the baton, I did that once myself when I developed a small choir, and I used to feel I had the imposter syndrome, that I had no right to be that conductor. But you certainly did. And when you did, well, who did you look up to? Because you didn't go the usual route, as an assistant to someone.
Uh,
Who were the greats that you looked up to admire and learn from?
well, you're right. I didn't take the normal route. I mean, when I was at school at Juilliard, there were a number of conductors there. I wasn't a conductor. I did all the conductor courses because
hmm
I
hmm
was advanced in ear training and harmony and count. I was advanced in all that. So they had to give me the conductor courses. There was no option. But Leonard Slatkin was there when I was there, and John Nelson was there, and Dennis Russell Davies, and Jimmy Conlon. I mean, there were some wonderful conductors studying, and I was not studying conducting. I mean, I worked, thank goodness, with some of the great teachers, Jacob Druckmann and Milton Babbitt, Vincent
Oh,
Persichetti,
yeah.
Rene Alongi. I mean, just great, great teachers. But I wasn't going that route. I was not studying conducting. So for me, it was a whole different trajectory about how I got to where I am. I'm a great believer in studying conducting now that I teach it, but I didn't have that privilege. I wish I had. But by the time I started to conduct full time when I was about 30, I felt I was behind and I needed to catch up. I needed to
Mm.
all that repertoire and conduct and conduct and conduct. And then Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, New York Chambers. I mean, things happened, came my way.
Yeah.
I worked at it. I tried to find my way, but it was a very difficult transition, a very difficult time. Uh, People think when they look at your life or my life or somebody's life and say, "Oh, it was such an easy transition from being in the orchestra to being a conductor." Boy, when it was going on, it certainly didn't seem that way. But then, in retrospect, it certainly was.
Yeah. Yeah. believe I read that you started conducting some dance groups, dance orchestras, and then, of course, you advanced on and did your own personal tenure, and then came the Seattle Symphony. This marriage of 26 years, Jerry. Wow.
It was how exciting for me is that people are given opportunities in life.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the pandemic and how difficult. Let's say you graduated college a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
What job are you going to get?
Right.
Or if you graduate college during a recession and there are no jobs available. And I remember I had a nephew who was graduating at a time when it was a pretty significant dip in the economy, and I suggested that he go back to school and get another degree rather than enter into the workforce at that moment, because it means so much. You have to pick the right moment where you can make those leaps and make those jumps and enter into that.
Agreed. And I know so many on Black Friday, March the 13th, when the music literally died, when it stopped, and so many performers that I knew could not literally get out of bed. Others took advantage and they went back to the recording studio, or they started their own podcasts, or, as you say, they entered into a new realm. And I know that the grief and the anger and the sense of loss was tremendous for any young musician, especially.
But in a way, you have to make your own way, and that's what I try to teach my students. Yes, certain things will come to you when you're really young, and if you're gifted, things will come to you. But then that stops, and you have to find your own way. And I remember, talking about Seattle, I was a music director of a summer festival in New Jersey called the Waterloo Festival, and I had 2 chamber orchestras. And my next step was to have a full-size symphony orchestra. And I was offered 3 positions at the same time. One was an orchestra that was very good. They wanted to status quo. They didn't want to do anything special. They were very happy. And to this day, they are like that. Then there was another orchestra, which was also very good, but had some personnel issues, some serious ones, including the concertmaster, who happened to be a friend. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to an orchestra and start firing people. I won't do that. I'm just not that way. I don't fire. And then the third orchestra that was offered to me at the time was Seattle. And my manager at the time, a very famous guy named Shelley Gold, said, well, go to this one, or you go to that one. But whatever you do, you don't go to Seattle. Seattle is a disaster. It's a guaranteed failure. You don't go there. Of course, when I conducted the orchestra and saw the community, I thought, wow, this has real potential. And they want to be great. Their desire is to be an important orchestra, to play wonderfully. They're willing to work hard. They're willing to do anything they can do to make it a special place. And I thought, boy, that's for me. And so that's when I made that choice to go there.
You bet.
I thought, at the time, I thought it would be quick. I said, we'll really develop the orchestra. We'll start making some recordings. And 3-4 years, boom, it's going to be dynamite. I tell the players, look, we keep working hard. We keep getting better. The audience will grow, and boom, things will happen. Well, that's all true, except it didn't take 3 or 4 years. It probably took more like 8 or 10 years. That people started coming and they heard the different quality. People wanted to be in the orchestra. People wanted to stay. People practiced. You start creating a repertoire and you start creating an identity for yourself. And I was lucky because I was, when I went to Seattle, Microsoft had just begun. I mean, it was nothing.
Okay.
The only company, Amazon wasn't there. Starbucks was, but Boeing was the only company we had. So you had no companies. Look what happened to that city. Those great companies, and so many great companies. And so I was really lucky. I with Jody, with my wife, because she was very much a part of all this, we hit Seattle just at the right time.
Right time.
Where it was poised to explode culturally, economically, in terms of business. It was the most exciting time. And again, it may not have happened, but it did. I mean, it's in a way, the way I feel about Palm Beach now. Palm Beach is this beautiful community. It's really gorgeous, and it's a very wealthy community, and it's known to be a place where the extremely rich will go to retire or spend the winter. Well, that's all changed or changing. It's become a real city, a real cultural center with a wonderful concert hall, with an excellent opera and ballet, and all of a sudden, it's starting to emerge as an important place, and the orchestra is sensational. So I believe. I mean, will it be the same as Seattle? Well, probably not, because that's not what Palm Beach needs. They don't need me to help build Benaroya Hall or 52-week season or anything else. But it's certain. I mean, already it is making such great strides artistically and in terms of what we're accomplishing. This year alone, we've already done 3 television shows. I mean, believe it or not, 2 of them are for CBS 12, a commercial station. When is classic been on a commercial station? I mean, the relation, Sinclair is the parent company. I mean, the fact that we have this relationship that goes because we have a fabulous staff, a fabulous board, great musicians, and it's very exciting. In a way, it's as exciting as it was for me when we first went to Seattle.
In a completely different way. It's interesting you talk about the commercial success here, and I know you've had great success on PBS and with all of your recording, and now Behind the Baton, which is this delightful series that you've developed. In a place like Palm Beach, you can make this kind of magic happen. And the responsibility that the wealthy have for music and the arts is extraordinary. You see it on the streets in Palm Beach, Florida. And I have to say that that's one of the upsides of that area. So yeah, again, you're lucky to be there, and it's warm, Jerry. It's not raining every day.
The weather's beautiful, but what's interesting too is we're making a special important impact educational. We're now starting a library of educational concerts, not young people's concerts like Bernstein did, and not some of the things I've done with the All-Stars, but rather we just recorded a piece called The Shoebird by Sam Jones, which is a phenomenal story by Eudora Welty for children. And yes, it deals with the instruments, but it deals with morals, it deals with ethical issues, it deals with who we are and what words mean. I mean, and so we're developing a whole series of these, and it's really quite extraordinary. It's a whole nother world for orchestras. It's not to say that orchestras don't do children's concerts. Of course they do children's concerts, but these are ones that will last forever.
Remarkable. Very significant, Jerry. Very significant.
Yeah.
Tell me, I don't see it in you, but are you ever going to slow down? I mean, as an architect, you're building things all the time, and I get the impression your energy gets a high from that, and that's no small thing. I mean, I love to consider myself a builder too. I mean, and these projects are worthwhile, but I don't know. Musicians never seem to tire. So, and you certainly don't have that look of someone who's going to sit back and say, "Well, it's time now just to go have a drink and sit on the beach."
No. I will never slow down. I must say, after Seattle, I did take a few years where a couple of orchestras were offered to me, and I just didn't want to do that again. I had done my music director. I was there 26 years plus 2 years before that, so it was actually 28 years, and a lot of pressure to get a better life for the musicians, to service the community, to service the composers. I mean, it's a huge amount that you have to carry. Other people carry it with you. You don't carry it alone. But and so for a few years, I did a lot of composing and arranged, and I stepped back a little bit. But then I said, this is something I really know about. I know how to be a music director. I know this world, and I'm going to get back in. And so, what's been very lucky for me is to be involved, well, in many things, but especially these 2 Florida positions I have. One at the Frost School, which is just a joy. With a school, you can have an idea, and we have one of the great deans of all time, a guy named Shelley Berg. You have an idea and say, Shelley, what do you think of this? Yes, this is normal answer. I mean,
fantastic.
What's going on here now is just, yes, you never slow down because you can't, because it's too exciting. The same thing in Palm Beach, the same thing at the Eastern Music Festival, and quite frankly, the same thing with the All-Stars. So these four things going on now, every day is something exciting. And slow down as long as I'm in the kind of health I'm in. I'm never going to slow down.
That's fantastic. And you were always recognized, I believe, as a conductor who didn't want to guest conduct all around the world all the time. You really wanted to stay with your individual projects. Is that right? You wanted to put your energy there.
You think about this. I have 4 children, and they all grew up. The 2 of them, the youngest 2, which are now, well, the youngest, I guess, is 30 now. So anyway, the youngest 2 were born in Seattle, and the older 2 came to Seattle. And I was able to be, to a point, a normal parent. Yes, I did some work, of course, and I had my orchestra in Liverpool and so forth. But I had the privilege not only of building Seattle, but living there as a father and a husband. And how lucky was I?
Exactly.
That continues. You think about your life. Guest conducting is wonderful. I love guest conducting. It's really fun. You learn a lot. It's remarkable. But when you build something like we did in Seattle, it's nothing like that. To walk around Benaroya Hall, which is one of the great concert halls in the world, at least I think so, it is such an honor that I was allowed to be part of it, to be part of building it, to making the major decisions about the acquisition and the architect and everything about the hall. I mean, that was a great gift. And so if you're running around the world conducting everywhere, which is fun, and I do it somewhat, and I like it, it's not the same as making an impact.
Right.
And I think, I remember once my dear friend Leonard Slatkin said how he felt I was so lucky to have been able to be grounded in Seattle and raise my family there. And I agree with him.
Do you miss the Pacific Northwest?
Of course. I love Seattle. I loved our house. I loved our neighborhood. I even liked the rain, believe it or not. The rain was wonderful. But what's interesting for me, after all those years there, I thought, if at my age, if I was ever going to do anything of significance beyond Seattle, I couldn't do. I did my job there. I built the orchestra. We made hundreds of recordings. We built a concert hall, built an audience. When I came, there were 5,000 subscribers. When I left, there were 40,000 subscribers. A whole new world. But I felt that what I was trying to do in terms of education and building an audience, that was the idea that we could go on public television and have a library of great works that you can watch by going on the allstarorchestra.org website or go on YouTube. I mean, what we've done, I think we had something like 7 million students following us. It's quite
incredible.
Wonderful. It was a dream, and I thought, I can't do that dream, and then also because that's a real conflict.
Yeah, exactly. And so tell me about the All-Star Orchestra. What was the evolution of this?
Well, that was it. It was my last contract in Seattle. And when I signed it, I went home and told my wife, said, I just signed a new 3-year contract, but that's it. This is my last one because I want to do something else. And Jody is always with me. She said, great. So we thought, what do I want to do? I want to build a larger audience for classical music, and I want to educate as much as I can. So how can you do that? Well, building the audience, I felt, was through television. Make it free, make it available, not on cable. Not that I'm against cable, I like cable, but if you do it on public television, everyone can have it. It's free. If you have a TV set, you got it. And we're in 90% of the public stations. Then I wanted to do an educational component to that. And so at that time, we were working with the Khan Academy, and that's where we got so millions of students involved. So the idea was to educate and to make classical music not a peripheral idea for our cultural lives, but integral to our cultural lives.
Okay.
There are very few people that really love what we love. So if 5% of the people in the country love classical, care about classical music, wow, what would it be like if there were 10% or 15% or 20%? So that was what I really wanted to do initially. And we've done 20, 21, 22 shows. We're doing 4 more shows this year with maybe the greatest orchestra. There's nothing, no such thing, with a really great orchestra. And so that was the genesis of that. And it continues. And it's the most fun. We get together, all these musicians many of whom know each other, all of whom I choose, together with my executive director, Paul Schwendener, and our personnel managers. And we're there just enjoying music. And everyone in the orchestra knows the repertoire. So no one's coming having to learn how to play the notes in Daphnis and Chloe. They can play the notes. They play Daphnis and Chloe.
Right.
So you're not building an orchestra, but rather you're taking the best. And you try to do it. We tried to do it from orchestras all over the country so that it wouldn't be a New York show or a Seattle show or Cleveland show. But rather, there are 32 major orchestras. We want to get as many variety of people, of course, that I know and that I've worked with and who have concepts similar to mine, so that you're not, in a sense, someone would say to me, oh, you can't throw a bunch of musicians together and make a cohesive ensemble. Oh, really? Listen to our shows. Listen
you can.
To Sibelius, listen to these pieces, and you can hear that you pick the right people who are sensitive, fine musicians with experience, know the repertoire, who will follow the conductor. It's just brilliant. And for me, so many of the musicians are dear friends for many years. And some of them I went to school, some of them my wife went to school with, Juilliard. I mean, it's just exciting for all of us.
I love it. I love it. The circle is complete, so to speak. Yeah. I love that. And the word star, I mean, you are a star. You've got that star quality, and you're bringing that to the masses as well, because all-star orchestra, all-star basketball team. I mean, we're out there.
You got it exactly. Because I remember when we first started thinking about this, and originally we're all Seattle folks, dear friends, and I said, okay, I want to call it the All-Star Orchestra, and no, maybe it's the All-Star Classical Orchestra or the All-Star Orchestra for the Classics or something. And I said, no, I want it to be the All-Star. Well, then it could be a jazz band. Exactly. It could be the All-Star Basketball team or the All-Star Baseball team.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. What you're trying to do is make it comfortable, not put people off.
Not intimidating.
People think if you don't wear tails, if you wear dungarees or jeans or whatever, that people would be more inclined to go to. I mean, that's ridiculous. And it doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. On the other hand, you try to make it accessible and easy. That's certainly true. It's not about what you wear, but it can be about what you're called. And so that's why we're the All-Star Orchestra.
That's right. That represents you well. I adore that.
Thank you, Pamela.
Now, listen, you've given me so much time and I so appreciate it, but I have 2 more questions. And the first being, I have a feeling how you're going to answer this, of course, coming as you did from a loving family. You have the advantage now of being able to perform with your children. It must be very gratifying.
It's for a parent to, my oldest daughter's a surgeon, and she lives in Milwaukee, and she's a great surgeon. There's, I can be of no help to her. I can't tell her how to do surgery. I mean, sometimes because she's the head of surgery at her hospital, she can call me if she has an issue, but she doesn't really. I mean, imagine what it's like when you have a child who actually is in your field. Wow. Now, my son, Julian, who's one of the greatest cellists in the world, he doesn't come to me and ask me, and he doesn't play for me. But we're in the same world. And
Yeah.
if he needed some help, I could help him. But the thing we do together 2 or 3 times a year is to play together. And that
Oh,
is one of the greatest thrills. Because here I'm conducting, and there's my son, I think, one of the great musicians I've ever worked with. And he's a mensch, a really wonderful young man. And for me, what could be more? I mean, I love all my children, obviously,
mhm,
but in
mhm.
terms of performing, he's the one that I can work with, and it's a real thrill.
And you are learning from him as well.
Well, it's always like that. I mean, you talked about behind the baton. I did a couple of behind the batons with Julian, and even on the shows, we don't always agree about everything.
Fair
He,
enough.
it's just wonderful to learn from him, and hopefully, maybe on occasion, he might learn from me too.
That's so fantastic. Now, because I'm coming to you from Eastern Oregon, I just have to bring a blast from the past. So it was mentioned to me that when you were playing trumpet, you actually did a recording with a wonderful bassoonist by the name of Julie Fivas.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember this?
How do you know Julie Fivas? I have to ask you. I'm sorry.
So, because I am the age I am, and I come out of her generation, and I grew up in Eastern Oregon, she did as well. And the Vivas family were quite elite in Pendleton, Oregon. And I came from a town nearby, and our paths crossed with the entire family many, many times. And some of the other notables out of this area, which is interesting, Jerry, in Hermiston, Oregon, where I'm speaking to you from right now. Let's see, I left high school in 1970 and went on. Kelly Kuo, the young conductor, who is now the head of Reno Symphony and several other small symphony orchestras and opera houses, he originally came from Hermiston, Oregon. Another violinist by the name of Ron Blessinger, who now is playing in Germany, came from this area. Wow. And going back a little further, I mean, Thomas Hampson, if we retrace his steps from Washington State. So it's always interesting to me in these rural areas how there is that spark, that grows. And we find a way to find ourselves out in the world. So
Julie and I were at Juilliard at the same time, and she probably still is, but she was a beautiful bassoonist, and there was a wonderful harpsichord player named Helen Katz, and I always loved making records. I'm 50, so you figure that's something I care about, and I was in the American Brass Quintet, and we were doing some recording. That was very exciting, and I thought, gee, I'd like to do a solo recording. Now, you want to do something, you're going to hire an orchestra? It's not possible. Afford that. But I had some pieces by the 2 early Baroque composers, Frescobaldi and Fontana. Both of them were sonatas, but they were written for an unspecified instrument, could be played by any treble instrument. So with the recorder or a violin or whatever. So I know it's made for me because I was a treble instrument. And the accompaniment, or the chamber group, was a bassoon, harpsichord, and a trumpet. So I went to Julie and to Helen. I said, hey, I'd like to make this recording of Frescobaldi and Fontana. I think I was 18 or 19 as they were. And we did it. And we had a ball. We made the recording, and it was called The Age of Splendor. And, it's not bad. Not long ago, Naxos Records put out a 30 CD box called the Gerard Schwarz collection. The idea for that collection was pieces that either never came out on CD or were deleted. I did a recording with Gunther Schuller that Columbia had. It was long deleted. It was things like that you can't get. And among the pieces are some of those, a few of those Frescobaldi Fontana pieces, because that was on a record label called Desto, and that Desto's long gone, never came out on CD. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun to put a few of those on from those days?
Oh, yes.
So I listened to them, and I said, they're not bad. I was pretty good. And Julie sounded wonderful, and Helen as well.
That's so brilliant. That's so brilliant. We can share that. You will never get that from any other interviewer, I tell you right now. That came through your friends at the Eugene Symphony, actually, that pointed that out to me. Listen, you've been so generous with your time, Jerry. I mean, you're so gracious. You're so filled with life. I adore this. I wish every guest could be this way.
You're
Thank you.
full of life and energy.
Thank you.
I look
I
forward
try.
to being together, not just verbally, but actually physically being somehow. We can meet sometime. It's just a joy.
We will meet in Palm Beach. I tell you, on Worth Avenue. I know a nice little restaurant we can just dip into. And just before we go, if there is one word or phrase, just what comes to the top of your head that describes the heart of who you are,
I don't know. A single word that came to my mind was perseverance, because we conductors, that's what you have to persevere all of the issues that are thrown in your way. For me, it's the joie de vivre, the joy of life. That's what I'm about, and that's what my life's about. And great music. What else? And great family. That's it. It's great.
That sounds just about perfect, Gerard Schwarz. Listen, I want to thank you for being on Center Stage. This has been an interview to remember. To all my listeners out there, this has been a Zoom broadcast, which you will be able to find at my website, centerstagewithpamelakuhn.com, and at WGCH.com, which is WGCH Talk Radio in Greenwich, Connecticut. And to everyone, please, I will ask you to go to GerardSchwarz.com so you can find out more about this incredible man, the architect of our musical times. Jerry, thank you for being with me. It's been absolutely brilliant. So all the best to you. Don't be a stranger, and and take care of yourself and be good to yourself. To all my listeners out there, please stay safe. And I'll be back again every Tuesday morning at 9:02 at WGCH.com. And in the meantime, this is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is now down on Center Stage.